The year was 2000. A new millennium had just begun. People around the world were worried about Y2K, celebrating the future, and looking ahead to a brand new century. But while millions of Americans were focused on what was coming next, the United States Mint quietly released a coin that, decades later, would spark treasure hunts, online bidding wars, and dreams of discovering hidden wealth in everyday pocket change. What if I told you that a seemingly ordinary 2000p Washington quarter, a coin most people have ignored for years, has been linked to reports of values reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars under very specific and extraordinary circumstances? Could one of these quarters still be hiding in an old jar, a forgotten drawer, or even in your pocket right now? Today, we're uncovering the fascinating story of the 2000p Washington quarter, its history, its secrets, its rare errors, and why some collectors have become obsessed with finding the perfect example of this modern American coin. At first glance, the 2000p Washington quarter doesn't appear special at all. It features the familiar portrait of George Washington, a design that Americans had carried in their pockets for decades. The obverse, created by sculptor John Flanagan, depicts the first president of the United States facing left, accompanied by the words, "Liberty, in God we trust," and the date 2000. But this wasn't just another year in American coinage history. The year 2000 marked only the second year of the wildly successful state quarters program, one of the most ambitious coin programs ever undertaken by the United States Mint. Millions of Americans suddenly became collectors. Families searched through pocket change. Children filled colorful maps with quarters from different states. Coin collecting, once considered a niche hobby, became a national treasure hunt. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the small P mint mark, struck hundreds of millions of quarters during this historic period. These coins circulated through every corner of America, passing through cash registers, vending machines, piggy banks, and countless hands. And because so many were produced, most people assumed they would never be valuable. But history has a way of surprising us. To understand why some 2000p Washington quarters have attracted extraordinary attention, we need to understand the difference between ordinary coins and extraordinary survivors. Think about it. Every day, coins are dropped, scratched, spent, damaged, and worn down. By the time most quarters have circulated for a few years, they've lost much of their original brilliance. But occasionally, a coin escapes this fate. It remains untouched, perfectly preserved, retaining the exact appearance it had the moment it left the mint. These pristine survivors are incredibly rare. Professional grading companies evaluate coins on a scale from 1 to 70, with a grade of MS-70 representing absolute perfection. Achieving this grade is extraordinarily difficult. Even microscopic imperfections can prevent a coin from reaching the highest level. And this is where the story becomes truly fascinating. While ordinary 2000p Washington quarters remain worth only their face value of 25 cents, examples graded at the very highest levels have sold for astonishing amounts. Certain registry quality specimens, preserved in virtually flawless condition, have commanded prices that most people would never imagine possible for a modern quarter. But condition alone isn't the only factor that creates excitement. Some of the most valuable modern coins owe their fame to mistakes. Yes, mistakes. During the minting process, tiny errors can occur. Dies can become damaged. Strikes can be misaligned. Metal can flow improperly. And when these rare manufacturing accidents escape quality control, they create something collectors desperately seek: uniqueness. Among the most sought-after examples are dramatic error coins featuring off-center strikes, die cracks, double dies, and other unusual characteristics. These errors transform ordinary pocket change into one-of-a-kind historical artifacts. Imagine discovering that a quarter you've ignored for years contains a minting anomaly so rare that collectors across the country compete to own it. It sounds unbelievable. Yet stories like this have happened repeatedly throughout numismatic history. What's particularly interesting about the 2000p Washington quarter is its connection to a unique moment in American culture. The turn of the millennium represented optimism, uncertainty, and transformation. The coin itself became a symbol of that era, a small metallic time capsule preserving the hopes and excitement surrounding the year 2000. Collectors often describe coins as pieces of frozen history. And in many ways, they're right. Every scratch, every strike, every detail tells a story about the people who created, used, and preserved these objects. The 2000p quarter witnessed the dawn of the Internet age, the rise of digital commerce, and the beginning of a new century. But perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding this coin is a simple question. How many extraordinary examples are still undiscovered? Consider this for a moment. Hundreds of millions of these quarters were produced. Many remain hidden in old collections, forgotten coin jars, safety deposit boxes, and inherited estates. Some owners may have no idea what they're holding. Could a nearly perfect specimen still be waiting to be found? Could an undiscovered mint error remain hidden among thousands of ordinary quarters? Treasure hunters and collectors believe the answer is yes. That's why coin roll hunting has become so popular. Enthusiasts visit banks, obtain rolls of quarters, and carefully examine each coin under magnification, searching for that one extraordinary discovery. Most searches end in disappointment, but occasionally someone finds something remarkable. Stories circulate throughout the collecting community about individuals who discovered valuable coins in pocket change, inherited collections, or forgotten jars stored in attics for decades. These stories fuel the excitement, creating a sense of possibility that keeps collectors searching year after year. And perhaps that's the true magic of the 2000p Washington quarter. It's not merely a piece of metal worth 25 cents. It's a symbol of hope, curiosity, and the timeless human desire to uncover hidden treasure. Of course, it's important to separate fact from fantasy. While claims of values reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars often refer to exceptionally rare circumstances involving elite-grade specimens or extraordinary errors, the overwhelming majority of 2000p quarters remain common circulation coins. Still, the existence of even a handful of extraordinary examples is enough to capture the imagination of collectors worldwide. So the next time you receive change at a store, open an old coin jar, or discover a forgotten collection tucked away in a family drawer, take a closer look. Because history has taught us something remarkable. Sometimes the greatest treasures don't come from pirate ships, buried chests, or ancient ruins. Sometimes they come from the coins we've been carrying in our pockets all along. And somewhere out there, perhaps in a dusty box or a forgotten collection, a truly extraordinary 2000p Washington quarter may still be waiting for someone to discover its secret. The question is, will that person be you? The year was 2001. America was stepping into a new millennium, unaware that some of the ordinary coins passing through cash registers, vending machines, and pockets across the country would one day become the center of a modern treasure hunt. Millions of people spent them without a second thought. But today, one particular coin from that year has sparked curiosity, excitement, and even stories of incredible discoveries. What if I told you that a seemingly ordinary 2001p Washington quarter could be worth far more than 25 cents? And what hidden secrets could still be hiding in your pocket change right now? The Washington quarter is one of the most recognizable coins in American history. First introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th birthday of George Washington, the coin was never originally intended to become a permanent design. Yet, its popularity ensured that it remained a cornerstone of American currency for generations. By the time the year 2001 arrived, the Washington quarter had already become an icon, circulating through the hands of millions of Americans every single day. But the 2001p Washington quarter belongs to a particularly fascinating era in U.S. coinage history. This was the height of the state quarters program, one of the most successful coin programs ever launched by the United States Mint. Americans who had never considered collecting coins suddenly found themselves searching through their change, filling maps, and hunting for rare varieties. It was a nationwide treasure hunt unlike anything seen before. The P Mint mark on these quarters indicates they were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most historic mints in the United States. In 2001 alone, the Philadelphia Mint produced billions of quarters. At first glance, that enormous number would suggest that number 2001p quarter could ever be rare. After all, how could something made in the billions become valuable? That's where the story takes an unexpected turn. In the world of coin collecting, rarity isn't always about how many coins were originally produced. Sometimes it's about how many survive in extraordinary condition. Sometimes it's about errors. And sometimes it's about mysterious variations that were never supposed to exist at all. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a quarter that appears perfectly ordinary. The date reads 2001. The mint mark shows a small P. You almost spend it on a cup of coffee. But what if that coin contained a hidden error that only a trained eye could recognize? What if that 25-cent piece was worth hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars? Over the years, collectors have discovered several fascinating varieties and errors among 2001 P Washington quarters. Some feature dramatic die cracks, creating unusual raised lines across the coin's surface. Others display off-center strikes, double strikes, or die breaks that transformed ordinary quarters into collectible treasures. These manufacturing mistakes occurred during the high-speed minting process, where thousands of coins were being struck every minute. One of the most intriguing aspects of coin collecting is that mistakes often become more valuable than perfection itself. The very flaws that caused a coin to fail quality standards are sometimes what make collectors desperately want to own it decades later. But condition may be even more important than errors. Most 2001 P Washington quarters entered circulation immediately. They were spent, dropped, scratched, and worn through years of everyday use. However, a tiny number survived in pristine, uncirculated condition. These exceptional examples, especially those graded at the highest levels by professional grading services, have achieved astonishing prices at auction. Consider this for a moment. 2 quarters minted in the same building on the same day using the same equipment could have dramatically different values today. One might still be worth only 25 cents. Another, preserved perfectly for decades, could command thousands of dollars among collectors. And that's exactly what makes coin hunting so addictive. Every coin tells 2 stories. The first is the story of its creation. The second is the story of its survival. The 2001 P Washington quarter also reflects a remarkable moment in American culture. At the beginning of the 21st century, physical currency remained central to everyday life. People still carried pocket change, used vending machines, paid tolls with coins, and checked their couch cushions for spare quarters. Few could have imagined how rapidly the world would move toward digital payments in the decades that followed. That shift has created an unexpected consequence. Modern coins are becoming historical artifacts far sooner than previous generations ever anticipated. Now imagine a child in 2001 receiving a handful of quarters as allowance money. Perhaps one of those quarters was placed into a jar, forgotten in an attic, and rediscovered decades later. Could that forgotten coin now represent a hidden treasure? It's a question that fuels countless collectors and treasure hunters around the world. Adding to the mystery are reports of rare high-grade specimens and unusual mint errors that continue to surface unexpectedly. Auction houses occasionally announce surprising sales that reignite interest in these seemingly common coins. Every time a remarkable example appears, thousands of people begin searching through old collections, coin jars, and inherited estates. And perhaps that's the greatest magic of coin collecting. Unlike most treasures, rare coins don't require maps, secret caves, or dangerous expeditions. They might already be sitting in your home. They may have passed through your hands countless times without you ever noticing. The humble 2001 P Washington quarter serves as a reminder that extraordinary discoveries often hide in the most ordinary places. Behind its familiar portrait of George Washington lies a story of American history, industrial precision, human error, cultural change, and the enduring thrill of the hunt. So the next time you receive a quarter in your change, pause for just a moment. Look closely at the date. Examine the mint mark. Study the details, because somewhere out there, another collector is searching for the exact same thing you're holding. And who knows? The next great coin discovery might not be hidden in a museum vault or buried beneath ancient ruins. It might be waiting quietly in your pocket right now. If you enjoy uncovering hidden treasures, forgotten histories, and the incredible stories behind everyday coins, make sure to subscribe and join us on our next adventure. Because in the world of rare coins, The greatest discovery is always the one you haven't found yet. The year was 2005. Millions of Americans were spending quarters without giving them a second thought. They dropped them into vending machines, parking meters, and cash registers across the country. But hidden among those ordinary coins was a Washington quarter that would later spark the curiosity of collectors and treasure hunters alike. A coin that, under the right circumstances, could be worth hundreds, thousands, and according to some sensational claims circulating online, even as much as $925,000. But what is the real story behind the 2005 Washington quarter? And could one of these forgotten coins still be hiding in your pocket change today? The story begins with one of America's longest-running coin series. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of the birth of George Washington, America's first president. What was originally intended as a one-year commemorative issue became a permanent fixture in American currency. For decades, the familiar portrait of Washington remained a symbol of American history and tradition. But by 2005, the United States Mint was in the middle of one of its most ambitious coin programs ever created, the 50-state quarters program. Launched in 1999, this groundbreaking initiative transformed the ordinary quarter into a miniature canvas celebrating the unique identity of each American state. Suddenly, millions of people who had never cared about coins before were checking their pocket change, hoping to complete their collections. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D Mint mark on the coin, played a crucial role in this historic program. During 2005, the Denver facility struck hundreds of millions of quarters featuring 5 different states: California, Minnesota, Oregon, Kansas, and West Virginia. These coins entered circulation by the millions, and most Americans spent them without ever imagining they could one day become the focus of treasure hunts and collector excitement. But here's where the story takes an intriguing turn. Most 2005 Washington quarters are worth exactly what you would expect, 25 cents. Yet every year, collectors continue searching through rolls of quarters, bank boxes, and old jars because they know a secret that casual spenders often overlook. Sometimes, the true value of a coin isn't determined by its age. It's determined by something far more unpredictable: condition. Imagine 2 identical quarters minted on the same day in Denver in 2005. One spends years bouncing through cash registers, scratching against hundreds of other coins. The other somehow avoids circulation entirely, remaining pristine and untouched. 20 years later, one is still worth 25 cents. The other could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. This phenomenon has transformed modern coin collecting into a fascinating treasure hunt. For example, certain 2005 state quarters preserved in extraordinary condition have achieved impressive prices at auction. Coins receiving the highest professional grades, particularly those graded mint state 68 or higher by major grading services, have sold for hundreds and occasionally thousands of dollars. These are coins so perfectly preserved that finding one is like discovering a flawless diamond in a pile of ordinary stones. But condition isn't the only factor that excites collectors. Throughout American coin history, mint errors have become legendary. Double strikes, off-center strikes, missing clad layers, die cracks, and dramatic misalignments have transformed ordinary coins into prized collectibles. The 2005 quarters were no exception. A small number emerged from the mint with fascinating errors that continue to attract serious collectors today. Consider the excitement of discovering a quarter struck off-center. Imagine looking at your change and realizing that George Washington's portrait appears shifted dramatically to one side, creating a striking visual anomaly. Suddenly, that ordinary quarter becomes a one-of-a-kind artifact of a split-second mistake inside the United States Mint. Or imagine finding a quarter with a major die crack stretching across its surface like a lightning bolt frozen in metal. To some people, it's merely a defect. To collectors, it's a historical fingerprint left behind by the machinery of the mint itself. Among the 5 state designs issued in 2005, each carries its own fascinating story. California's quarter honored naturalist and conservationist John Muir alongside the towering granite cliffs of Yosemite Valley. Minnesota celebrated its breathtaking lakes and wilderness heritage. Oregon showcased the majestic Crater Lake. Kansas featured the American buffalo and sunflower, symbols deeply connected to the state's identity. West Virginia highlighted the historic New River Gorge Bridge, an engineering marvel stretching across the Appalachian landscape. These weren't merely coins. They were tiny pieces of American storytelling circulating through millions of hands. And perhaps that's one of the reasons collectors became so passionate about them. Think about it. How many objects can you hold in your hand that simultaneously represent history, art, engineering, economics, and culture? A quarter isn't just money. It's a time capsule. But what about those extraordinary headlines claiming values of hundreds of thousands of dollars? Could a 2005 Washington quarter truly be worth $925,000? The answer requires separating fact from fantasy. In the world of online coin content, enormous valuations often capture attention. Sensational headlines spread quickly because they tap into a universal dream: the possibility that hidden wealth might be sitting unnoticed in a jar of spare change. While there are genuine examples of rare coins selling for hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, no standard 2005 Washington quarter has been publicly documented selling anywhere near $925,000 under normal collecting circumstances. However, that doesn't make the search any less exciting. Because every experienced coin collector understands a powerful truth: the next extraordinary discovery always begins with an ordinary coin. Some of the most famous numismatic discoveries in history occurred because someone decided to look a little closer. A forgotten collection in an attic. A coin jar passed down through generations. A roll of quarters purchased from a local bank. Could there still be undiscovered 2005 era quarters sitting unnoticed somewhere in America? It's entirely possible. And that's exactly what keeps collectors searching. Perhaps right now, tucked away in an old coffee can, hidden inside a piggy bank, or resting quietly at the bottom of a kitchen drawer, there's a 2005 Washington quarter waiting to reveal its secret. Maybe it's a spectacular mint error. Maybe it's an exceptionally preserved specimen. Or maybe it's simply a reminder that history often hides in the most ordinary places. So the next time you receive a quarter in your change, don't spend it too quickly. Take a closer look. Because treasure hunters know something that everyone else forgets. Sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't buried underground. Sometimes they've been hiding in plain sight all along. And who knows? Your next quarter might have a story worth far more than 25 cents. The year was 2020. Around the world, uncertainty filled the air. Millions of people stayed home, businesses closed, and history unfolded in real time. Yet, amid one of the most extraordinary periods in modern history, the United States Mint quietly released a coin that most Americans barely noticed. A simple quarter, 25 cents. But what if I told you that one particular 2020 Washington quarter has sparked intense interest among collectors, created treasure hunting fever, and led some enthusiasts to believe that a single coin pulled from pocket change could be worth an astonishing $920,000? Could a modern quarter, a coin many people toss into a jar without a second thought, really hold such incredible value? And if so, what makes this ordinary-looking piece of metal so extraordinary? To understand this mystery, we have to travel back through more than 2 centuries of American history. The story of the Washington quarter began in 1932, when the United States celebrated the 200th anniversary of the birth of President George Washington. What was originally intended as a commemorative issue quickly became one of the longest-running coin series in American history. For generations, the Washington quarter became more than currency. It became a symbol of American identity itself. By 2020, the United States Mint had already transformed the quarter into something much bigger than a simple monetary instrument. Through programs like the State Quarters in America, the Beautiful series, each new release became a miniature history lesson, capturing stories of national parks, historic sites, and American heritage. The 2020 Washington quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most historic mints in the United States. Millions of these quarters were produced, and at first glance, there seemed to be nothing remarkable about them. They carried the familiar portrait of George Washington on the obverse and featured designs celebrating America's natural and historical treasures on the reverse. But history has taught collectors one important lesson: rarity doesn't always reveal itself immediately. Throughout the world of coin collecting, Some of the most valuable discoveries began as ordinary coins hiding extraordinary secrets. A tiny minting mistake, an unusual die variety, a production anomaly so subtle that millions of people could overlook it for years. And that is exactly where the fascination surrounding certain 2020p Washington quarters begins. Imagine receiving change after buying a cup of coffee. You toss the quarters into your pocket without a second glance. Weeks later, while scrolling through social media, you discover that collectors are paying hundreds, thousands, or even more for specific examples of the very same coin sitting in your coin jar. Sounds impossible, doesn't it? Yet stories like this have fueled treasure hunting dreams for decades. The year 2020 itself adds another layer of intrigue. Due to the global pandemic, coin circulation patterns changed dramatically. Americans used less cash. Coin shortages emerged. The Federal Reserve even faced concerns about circulation disruptions. As a result, many 2020 coins experienced unusual distribution patterns, creating an environment that fascinated both collectors and researchers. Among the most talked about 2020 quarters were those featuring exceptional minting varieties, striking errors, and unusually preserved specimens. But here's where things become truly fascinating. In the world of rare coins, condition can be everything. Two identical quarters struck on the same day can have dramatically different values depending on their preservation. One may remain worth only 25 cents. Another, preserved in virtually flawless condition, could become a prized collector's treasure. Professional grading services use microscopic analysis to determine a coin's condition. The highest grades are extraordinarily difficult to achieve. In fact, a tiny scratch invisible to the naked eye can mean the difference between a coin worth a few dollars and one worth thousands. This brings us to one of the greatest mysteries in modern numismatics. Why would anyone pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for a modern quarter? The answer lies in a powerful combination of rarity, condition, demand, and human psychology. Collectors are not merely buying metal. They are buying stories. They are buying history. They are buying the possibility of owning something that almost nobody else possesses. Throughout history, collectors have demonstrated an incredible willingness to pay astonishing sums for unique coins. From ancient Roman aurei to colonial American pieces, rarity has always commanded attention. But modern coins create a different kind of excitement because they suggest that extraordinary discoveries remain possible for ordinary people. Think about that for a moment. You don't need to excavate an ancient treasure ship. You don't need to inherit a king's collection. Sometimes all you need is a sharp eye and a little luck. The Philadelphia Mint itself carries a rich legacy stretching back to 1792. It has survived wars, economic depressions, technological revolutions, and societal transformation. Every coin struck there becomes part of a continuing American story. The 2020p Washington quarter represents not just a piece of currency, but a snapshot of a remarkable historical moment. And perhaps that's why these coins continue to capture the imagination of collectors. Because when you hold a 2020 quarter, you're holding more than 25 cents. You're holding a witness to one of the most unforgettable years in modern history. A year when everyday life changed forever. A year when uncertainty reshaped the world. And a year when millions of ordinary coins entered circulation carrying stories that future generations would remember. Of course, claims of individual 2020p Washington quarters selling for extraordinary amounts, such as hundreds of thousands of dollars, typically involve exceptionally rare errors, unique circumstances, or speculative reports that require careful verification. The vast majority of 2020 quarters remain worth face value or modest collector premiums. But perhaps that's not the point. The true magic of coin collecting has never been solely about money. It's about the thrill of discovery, the possibility that history might be hiding in plain sight, the excitement of examining a handful of change and wondering whether you've found something extraordinary. So the next time you receive a Washington quarter, don't spend it too quickly. Take a closer look. Examine the date. Study the details. Consider the journey that coin has taken, from the historic halls of the Philadelphia Mint to your own hands. Because somewhere, at some point in history, Every great coin discovery began with someone asking a simple question. What if this ordinary coin isn't ordinary at all? And who knows? Your next quarter might have a story waiting to be discovered.